Okay, welcome everyone to our 2025 college panel. I'm so excited for this event. It's one of my favorite things that's part of the college counseling program. And I'm so excited to welcome 7 Veritas alumni back to our stage. And we're gonna go ahead and get started. We'll start with John Speed, and the college students are going to tell you their name, what school they attend, what year they are in school, what they're studying, if they have any majors or minors. And when you hear your Veritas house name, feel free to put out a big cheer for that. So we'll start with John.
Hello, my name is John Speed. I'm at Liberty University. I'm currently in my junior year. I'm studying computer engineering. I had a minor in technological entrepreneurship, but I got through most of those classes and then didn't want the last few classes, so I dropped it. And my Veritas house is St. Francis.
All right. My name is Gabriel Thompson. I'm a sophomore at Lebanon Valley College. I have a double major in actuarial science and data science and a double minor in math and computer science. So I win. And I'm St. Francis.
My name's Ruthie. I go to the University of Cambridge and I study classics. And don't have any, well, I'm doing philosophy and archaeology is my focuses within that. And my Veritas houses are Athanasius and Euler. So.
Right. Hi, I'm Meg Coughlin. I'm a junior at Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia. I am a double major in English and Medieval and Renaissance Studies with a classics minor, and I was an Euler.
Hi, my name is Sarah Jacob. I'm a senior at Grove City College. I'm majoring in biochemistry with a health minor, and I was part of St. Francis. Hey guys, my name is Naya. I actually just graduated from Regent University with a degree in business management.
How many years did it take you to finish that as a result of your dual enrollment courses, Naya?
2.5.
She finished college in 2.5 years, so that's pretty exciting.
And I was in St. Francis.
Hi, my name's Amaya Goff. I go to the University of Alabama. I'm a junior there. I'm double majoring in public health and biology with a minor in political science. And I was in Chesterton.
Hey, and Amaya, I can't see you, but I'm here. All right, Amaya's going to take our first question then, and she'll answer it and then just pass it down the row. So Amaya, tell us about your major. How did you decide upon it, and what have been some of your favorite courses? And for any of you, if you changed your major, that's something a lot of our students are not sure about. Feel free to give advice on how you decided a major was right for you or not right for you.
So my double major in public health and biology was originally because I wanted to go, I was so really healthcare focused. But I decided to add a minor in my sophomore year in political science because now I'm studying for the LSAT. So for law school this upcoming year and applying and everything. But how I decided on my major, public health at Alabama, it goes into everything with CDC, going through world health, global health. And then biology, obviously, all your bio classes, you have cell bio, microbio, you take all those, all the fun 5-hour labs too with them. But I also, one of my favorite classes would probably have to be epidemiology that I took, I think, fresh or sophomore year fall. And that's basically the study of diseases, but also it's paired with stats. So you get to basically take a stats class, but it's all healthcare focused, which is really fun if anybody's interested in healthcare. But it's kind of nerdy. You get to figure out all of in a state all the way to a global population, which is really cool. But yeah, that's basically how I decided upon that.
Okay, so my major, business with a concentration in management. So I took all of the overarching business classes, but then my concentration, which is
kind of like a minor, but not really, was all of my management classes. So how to manage a business, what that looks like. I don't know if I necessarily had a point where I was like, this is what I am going to do. I went in for business. I really enjoyed it. I know everyone goes for business nowadays, so we're here for that. But one of my favorite classes was international business. So basically, we learned about how different cultures and different countries will do business and what that looks like. And it was really interesting. We had to do a project where we took a US business and basically expanded it into another country and had to figure out like what that would look like in that country and all of the kind of formulas and little things that went along with that. But yeah, that was my favorite class.
Okay, so I'm a biochem major. As a high school senior, I didn't really know what that entailed, but I would say coming out of it after 4 years later, it's a really good major if any of you are interested in health in general, but maybe don't know what field of health, because you get to take pretty much all the bio classes, all the chem classes, and then you take biochem. And biochem is a class that's required. It's a prereq for most health programs after you graduate. So I loved it a lot. It is challenging at times because you don't necessarily have experience in all of those things, and you can kind of end up taking niche classes like physical chemistry and analytical chemistry, and you're like, wait, I didn't sign up for that. But it's a very broad major, and if you're trying to figure out what avenue of health you want to go down, it is a good option. One of my favorite classes was histology, which is the study of tissues. I really enjoyed it because I came out of it with like a skill that I could use. You're looking at different types of tissues from the body, and at the beginning of the class, they just look like blobs, but at the end, you're like, oh, that's the kidney, and I think that was really cool.
Hi, so I basically just study a bunch of different fields in the humanities, which means a lot of my courses between my majors and my minor overlap. But one of the best classes I think I've gotten to take in college was actually 2 different study abroad programs I did. Because there's so much interdisciplinary work in the humanities, I was able to study at Oxford for a summer, doing history and literature, which counted both towards my English major and my medieval and Renaissance studies major. So I basically got to study in the Bodleian Library for 8 weeks and spend my summer there reading everything I could get my hands on and writing really interesting papers. And then this spring, I actually got to go live in Italy for 4 weeks, doing archaeology and art history research in Rome, which has actually led to my summer research project last year, which was looking at the architecture of medieval Florence, which is really cool.
Yeah, so my major is basically everything ancient Greek and Roman. So the languages, the history, the philosophy, all that stuff. I was always kind of interested in ancient history, but I think one of the classes here that made me want to decide upon it was 10th grade omnibus class. Just always really had a passion for studying ancient history and all the adjacent things. But I think my favorite focus within classes has been my archaeology course. I had the opportunity to go on a 2-week archaeological dig this past summer in central Italy, and that was absolutely incredible. We were digging up a house by an old Roman forum, and I got to find a whole bunch of coins from the 1st century, and that's been really exciting. Also, the philosophy discussions in small groups with professors is excellent. So those have been my favorites.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna take us back to STEM world. So I'm actuarial science. For those of you who don't know what that is, I'm gonna just describe it as fancy accounting. As in accounting records the past, actuaries try to record the future and what will happen. So we make fun of accountants a lot. No hate on you guys if you want to go into that. It's fine, but we're better. In terms of favorite class, it's not in my major, but I had a class called Fitness, Instruction, and Design, which is basically, it was 3 credits, 1 hour a week, and you just had to basically design a fitness course. and then perform it in front of the class. But the teacher was really nice and she baked us cookies every week.
My major is computer engineering. A lot of misconceptions happen about computer engineering. Some people think that it's either all coding, and then some people think that it's you just build computers. It's neither. It's kind of you. It's a mix of electrical engineering and computer science. So you do touch some coding, but you also are working in the circuits, designing different circuitry, microelectronics, all of that, which is super fun. How did I decide upon it? There's 3 ways that people decide to be an engineer. I decided on computer engineer because I enjoyed building computers. But for engineering, either you enjoy building race cars and you struggle through the math, or you enjoy the math and you struggle through the building the race cars. And then there's the rare breed that enjoys the math and enjoys the building the race cars. I was more of the enjoys the math, and then more recently I've gotten into kind of shifting, and now I'm not as big of a fan of the theoretical side, and I just like to get my hands dirty more. But that's kind of how I decided on it originally, is because I enjoyed computers and I enjoyed math. And my favorite course has actually been this past semester. I took an embedded systems class, which is basically you're given a small computer chip and you have to program it to do a bunch of different things with for our class specifically, we learned how to make an LCD screen work, like a little electronic screen, display like numbers and text. And we used a sensor and some DC. DC is direct current, so electric motors to make a car move forward and backwards and turn and do a bunch of stuff from basically nothing. So designing all of the firmware and electronics for that system. So that's definitely been my favorite class so far. A car from the ground up and then take it to race against 120 other schools up in Michigan. So that takes anywhere from 10 to 20 hours a week and a lot of overnights. And then also I try to spend a lot of time in the Word and in community. So there's some really solid Bible studies and groups at Liberty. That's kind of, if that's not your number one focus that you're building everything else around, you're doing it wrong. Hate to break it to you. But so I would say those would be my 2 biggest things outside of classes and the relationships that come with that.
Yeah, so I'm slightly involved in the Christian group at LVC. That's like a once a week Bible study. But I would say I am the president of the soccer club at LVC, and then I helped co-found a spike ball club there. So both of those probably take up most of my time outside of class.
Yeah, outside of class, I am part of the Christian Union. I have Bible study and Sunday activities, which is highlights of my week. And then I'm also on my college's rowing team. So I'm up at 5 most mornings on the river, and that's been absolutely incredible. I love it so much.
So most of my time is actually taken up by research. I do about 10 to 15 hours outside of classes and homework a week on architecture and art history, even though I study neither of those things. But I'm also a writer for a literary magazine. One of my friends founded our freshman year, which focuses on the intersection between writing and nature. And I work for our library at Washington and Lee, part of the Library Student Advisory Board, facilitating connections between students and just helping the library be a better place for everyone.
At school, I'm part of a sorority, and I also do research with my professors. But I think outside of those things, something that takes up most of my time is I'm president of a group called IJM, which stands for International Justice Mission. Basically, it's part of a bigger world organization that helps fight human trafficking. So a lot of what our group does is raise awareness and advocate for IJM. We also do something called the Highway Project, where we go out on the highway and educate people who work at truck stops about human trafficking, as it's something that a lot of people don't really know about. And people who work at truck stops statistically are most likely to see victims and traffickers. So that's something that takes up a lot of my time, just leading that. But I also have fun like doing research with my professors and doing like activities and events on campus with my sorority.
Sorry. So I do a couple things. One of my favorite things is I'm part of the intramurals volleyball team. So, well, there are a lot of them, but I play volleyball for intramurals. I actually work at a stylist at a bridal shop, so that's a lot of fun. And I was an RA last year, so that took up a lot of my time as well.
I am involved in many things. The first one that takes up a lot of my time is a group on campus called Capstone Men and Women. So basically what Capstone Men and Women is, it's the official ambassadors of the University of Alabama. So around 2,000 people apply and an incoming class is 14 people. So you go through 2 interview processes. If you go to that interview, it's insane. They ask you a lot of questions, just kind of like get you off your feet because you're talking to a lot of prospective students coming from all around the country and you never know what you're going to get asked. So again, kind of preps you for the real world being an ambassador. I'm president of my sorority, which is really fun. It's kind of like fun to say, but when you think about it, it's like a corporation of like 500 people. So you're dealing with like a budget and your exec and everything. So that's really fun as well. I'm also part of a network in Birmingham. It's like an hour from my college called Children's Miracle Network Hospitals. So using a lot of like our philanthropy and raising money for them and doing hospital tours as well and visiting children is really fun. And then I'm also part of Capstone Wellness, which is just every Thursday we have our small group. So with our church, but yeah, that's about it. And SGA.
Thanks, Amaya. And you're going to start the next question, which is looking back, which Veritas class or classes or experiences were most helpful in your college preparation?
This is a good question. For classes wise, I would have to say all of either like your dual enrollment, like all your STEM classes, like calc, stats, would be like the big 2, and then also omnibus. So for classes specific, I would have to say that really helped. But another thing I want to touch on is experiences, and I'm glad Mrs. Forbes is here because I remember this in a discussion. But one time, I think it was in 7th grade, and Mrs. Forbes said, "Don't jump to believe anything, question everything." So when you go to college, you're going to meet a lot of people who just don't agree with you, and you're going to meet a lot of people who just have the opposite opinion. And in Veritas, like maybe you might find that, but again, you're probably going to be talking about the same things, kind of going in a circle and like, oh, I agree with you. Anyways, I'll add on in your discussions. But again, coming from, again, a public university with professors that, especially political science and a lot of those types of classes, if they say something, especially if like, again, I had strong morals going in coming from Veritas. So if they say something, I'm not just writing it down as a note and being like, all right, I'll memorize that later. I'll be like, oh, I wonder where they got that from. Or like, that's weird. Go after class and research it. Or like if they have numbers on the screen, the first thing is, I wonder where they got that from. That doesn't seem right. So again, like a lot of those like experiences and like learning just like, not like trusting everyone, but definitely like double checking and having kind of that balance of, you're just learning how to kind of think on your own, like real time, and especially bigger colleges. But yeah.
Okay, one of the things that I think was most helpful for me is like all of the books that you read throughout the omnibus curriculum. A lot of them, because Veritas is hard, a lot of them you'll see again in college. So you will be way more prepared to see those, to talk through those. Even books that you haven't seen before, omnibus prepares you really well to be able to kind of logically think through all the books that you're reading and the things that you're seeing. And professors really appreciate that because they are able to see like the logic in your statements. They're able to appreciate that. And it overall makes it much easier to go through a class when you're able to kind of remember some of the books, but also to be able to see new books in a very logical light. And it helps with quizzes and tests as well.
Yeah, I would echo the omnibus. I'll get on the omnibus train. I really enjoyed it. And two of my favorite classes, one of them was 9th grade omnibus with Mrs. Forbes. And my other one was apologetics with Mr. Stamper. Do you guys still have the class? No.
We still have apologetics.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah.
so apologetics. I really enjoyed those because I think one of the best things you can do before you go to college is really think through why you believe what you believe. Even if it's not necessarily, you don't maybe agree with your teachers or you agree with your parents, thinking through and not just accepting what is told to you, kind of like what Amaya was saying, is super important. And then when you get to college and you're faced with a whole bunch of differing opinions and worldviews, you kind of have something to stand on. And it may change as you go through college, but it's important to think it through so that when you are faced with different opinions, that you have something to kind of push back with and kind of be like, well, this is what I've believed, or this is what I was taught, and this is why I believe it. And you're able to have like actually productive conversations with people.
So in college, I'm basically doing omnibus college edition because I'm studying history and English. But more specifically, one of the classes I think that has impacted me most was my senior thesis. I'm actually just finishing up the application for my honors thesis at college, which is a continuation of my senior thesis from high school. But learning how to write a very long, complicated paper where you need to draw from different resources, as well as sometimes finding primary sources that aren't necessarily commonly available, and learning how to do research in libraries and being able to structure something that takes up so much of your time to do it, I think is very beneficial in college, because I know with my degree, I'm writing 4 or 5 15-page papers a semester, not to scare anybody off from studying the humanities, but it's just part of what I do. And so having an experience in high school, because coming into it, a lot of my peers had not had to write such a long, in-depth paper in high school. So it sort of gave me a leg up on that, as well as give me lots of things to read and explore, which lets me contribute to discussions in classes a lot more easily than if I didn't have some of this background information.
I'm going to sound like a parrot because my degree is also basically ancient history omnibus to the max in every single way. But I think one of the things I'm most thankful for is the roundtable discussions and having just the ability to learn how to speak in a group and with your peers when you disagree. I mean, at Veritas, we don't often disagree, but it is very helpful because at Cambridge, the system is lectures, and then almost all of my classes are one-on-one with the professor or two-on-one with the professor, and it's just conversations the entire time about languages or a paper I had to write. So yes, also the senior thesis and the amount of writing we have to do for omnibus is very helpful because you're just churning out essays all the time, and then you have to back them up in person to a professor, often alone. So having that basis in high school is extremely important. Also, the philosophy that we learn in Veritas and the broad scope of philosophy is extremely helpful when you're confronted with all of these worldviews, and they might not even know where their sources are coming from, but I can be like, ha, that's Kant, and you don't know it, but I know it. And that's very refreshing to have in your back pocket when you're going through life in college.
I chose a math major because I thought I wouldn't have to do any more writing. I was very wrong. My major requires that I explain complicated math topics to people that don't know the said complicated math. That being said, I think senior thesis, I had a pretty low grade in that, but it's probably one of the classes I use the most. That and probably trigonometry. Thank you, Mrs. Forbes.
Yeah, for engineering, I would say there's a few classes here that really helped and prepared me. The first one is logic. So logic kind of is just the base framework for anything, I think, at all in college, but definitely STEM related. To solve a problem, you kind of need to follow a logical flow almost always. So I'd say logic is super important. Rhetoric was also really important to me because public speaking is a huge differentiator for engineers. A lot of engineers are not great with formulating sentences. So if you can be the engineer that is good at speaking and good at writing, that will serve you really well. And the last thing, kind of to echo Gabe a little bit, and I really wish Blythe was here because I've been telling her this for 2 years now that I've been at college, but you use a lot of math in engineering. So I don't think I can think of a single engineering class or math class that hasn't referred to trig identities. We used Euler's formula the other day in my microelectronics class to prove some Fourier analysis for complicated signal analysis. So all of the algebra, like quadratics, trig stuff, matrices, we were using like Gaussian elimination the other week. So I know I'm hitting some nerves here, but I kid you not, I'm whipping out my Mrs. Forbes study guides my junior year of college. So the more that you guys have this in your brain, if you want to do any type of STEM, it will could save you 10 hours a week on a finals week. If you just have the trig identities in your brain, it could change your GPA from a 3.3 to a 3.8. So that I would say I really wish I knew how much they're used ahead of time. Hopefully you'll listen to me. Most of you probably won't, but that's your warning.
You're not the first alum
Yeah.
that has told me the study guides have impacted them in college, even just learning how to do them. So thank you, John. Okay, I'm going to skip the next question because you all alluded to your spiritual growth opportunities already. So the next question, is there anything about your college experience that you felt completely unprepared to face? This can be social, academic, ideological, or even life skills like managing your time. And you could also see this question as like, is there anything that surprised you when you got to college?
Yeah, this isn't college specific, but a big part of college is preparing you for the workplace and what you're doing after college. You don't have to have it all figured out going into college. I don't want to make any of y'all think that you need to know what you're doing even once you graduate going into college. But I think something that I was definitely unprepared for, I don't know if that's a question, unprepared to face, would be like how to go about effectively transitioning from college into the workplace, specifically in engineering. There's a lot of my friends as well don't specifically for internships. Engineers want to find internships during the summers between college so that they can get work experience and get networking contacts and referrals to companies. So I'd say keep your eyes open and be very proactive with learning as much as you can about how to effectively pursue internships, prepare for pursuing internships, making your resume look good, your background, and getting the experiences that will set you apart to companies. That's something that I wish I had done a lot more on in my senior year of high school and my freshman year and even up until now. So that would be it for me.
In terms of things I was blindsided by, I would probably just say the tests. Most of my math exams, I'm allowed to have a blank sheet of paper front and back with anything I want written on it, which sounds nice until you realize that the questions are mostly conceptual and take 2.5 hours to answer, which is lots of fun. Other thing for me is probably interviews, having to talk one-on-one with people in order to secure a job. I'm pretty bad at that, and I had to do a lot more of it than I wanted to in college.
I think when I think about things that I felt unprepared to face, there wasn't really anything when I got to college that I was completely blindsided by. I felt pretty okay, if not rocky, in every single area just because it was all very new and I was in a different country. But it all ended up being fine. I think my biggest piece of advice and thing I struggled with was just managing my anxiety and not staying up too late, sleep schedule, making healthy choices just physically, because I tend to overwork myself massively, and that really didn't pay off very well in the first few terms. So just being very careful about the basic habits in life going into college and nailing that down and keeping that as something that you don't budge on would be my advice, because that definitely affected my overall health the first year. But yeah.
Building off of that, one of the things that I was not necessarily blindsided by, but I had to learn how to deal with, is how to live with a complete stranger, um, which I had never done before. So my freshman year, my first roommate, she kept very different sleep schedules than I did, and she had swim practice at like 5 in the morning, so she'd be up then. We sort of had to learn how to live with one another. But on another note, one of the things that I really had to learn how to deal with is public transportation. That's not a big thing around here, and it's not a big thing in Lexington, Virginia, where my college is either. But as soon as you study abroad, all of a sudden you're in a country where you do not necessarily speak the language, and you are by yourself, and you need to learn how to work the public transportation system. The first time I had to use it by myself was when the new pope was giving his first Sunday mass. So they closed down several metro stations, and I had to get to an appointment, and I had to figure out how to get there all by myself. And I did not speak much Italian. I had some very basic, but not enough to communicate what I was trying to find necessarily. And so I just had to learn how to deal with it. And I would recommend figuring out how to work public transportation and do it by yourself when you're very stressed, before you study abroad, or even if you're considering going to college in a city. It's a major thing.
So there wasn't something that I felt completely unprepared to face in college, but to be honest, something that I struggled with in high school a lot, and it bled into college, is time management. And I had to learn that you can't just sit down in front of an anatomy textbook and memorize it from page 1 to page 352. So I had to slowly come up with different study methods that allowed me to understand mass amounts of information without memorizing every single word. I think that was the strategy I took a lot in high school, because it was possible sometimes, but in college, whenever you get a ton of information, I think one of the best things would have been for me to realize that early on in freshman year, instead of trying to be stubborn and memorize everything from front to back. I kind of had to come up with different ways that included, active recall and making outlines of things, and then slowly filling information in and doing broad overviews rather than trying to memorize like minute detail. I think that's something from high school going to college, that kind of just be prepared that it might jump from something that you can manage to memorize to things that you won't be able to memorize even within, an entire semester. So just the content changing is something that I wish I had been more prepared for.
So one of the fun things about Regent University is that they don't actually have a cafeteria. So your apartment your dorm is an apartment style. So you have a kitchen. So one of the things, I guess I knew about it going into it, right? Because I did sign up for it. But I suddenly had to learn how to manage grocery shopping and meal prep. And what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? And all of a sudden, I was the keeper of my own time and my own schedule. And time management is huge, because you have to learn how to do all of these things that your mom was doing for you, and that you have to set a bedtime for yourself, because otherwise you may not get sleep. So all of these things that you were being told to do as a high schooler are now all on your own. So learning how to manage that, learning how to manage your time, but also your social schedule. And I live near the beach. I love the beach. I go all the time. So also being I actually have to get work done today, and I can't go off with my friends and do the things that I want to do. So yeah, big time management advocate.
I kind of have two things. So I just remember when I was at Veritas, sometimes I would catch myself complaining about how many assignments I had to do. Within I have to do that discussion, I have to do that summary and all that. Then I get to college and you look at your syllabus and your only 2 grades are your midterm and your final. So you really wish that you had all those interim grades in between, so that you can maybe get a 72 on your microbiome final, and you're all right, I have to get 105 on my final to keep an A. So I don't know if you guys experience that, but some classes with 1 grade that you are completely responsible for. And coming from Veritas, you can go to your teacher anytime and ask them any question, and they are more than happy to answer your question and sit down with you. You get to college, some professors care. Some professors wouldn't care if you showed up within the next month or not. So you really have to have a lot of discipline going into some classes at college, especially when it comes to classes within your major, which you're going to get into sophomore, junior, senior year. So that's something I definitely had to learn, especially with a lot of science classes. Another thing I had to learn is I interned with a senator this past summer in DC. So I got to live in DC for about 10 weeks, be on the Hill, which was awesome, and kind of be in that like political world. But another thing, like with Meg and going somewhere else, like Tuscaloosa, Alabama is a college town. So you have a big stadium, you have sorority houses, your classes, all that. You get to DC, you're not surrounded by faculty and staff and students. You're surrounded by people who have a 9 to 5 to go to, and you better not get in their way because you're going to your internship, somebody's going to their job, and they have to buy groceries at the end of the day. So definitely learning and like being very aware of your surroundings. Learning public transportation, using your phone, being very independent. Sometimes I catch myself being too independent when I like do things, but I mean, DC was like kind of like a shell shock, even moving away so far from college, but it was super fun and I learned a lot. But something fun that I felt completely unprepared is during high school, like I went to like a Penn State game for football. Like anybody watch college football right now? Okay, cool. So like I went to those games and I get to the SEC, like Bama and Auburn and Ole Miss and all that. And it's like actually a big deal down there. And people are yelling at you, like grown men are barking from Georgia at us, like girls. And I'm just like, what is going on? And I'm just like, okay. But then we beat them, so it's fine. But it's just like kind of that social aspect too. But that's part of the fun.
Thanks, Maya. I'm going to skip a little bit more. And this is something like, I think when I'm working with students to talk about the college process, this is in the back of many seniors' minds, but it's not something we actually talk about a lot. So how did you go about making friends? Most of us have known each other for sometimes 12, 13 years. So going off by yourself, how did you go about making friends? Did it feel like a quick or a slow process for you?
So going to Alabama, when I told people I graduated with a class of 13, they looked at me like I was crazy when I went there. But again, the only person I knew was Brian Martin, and I rarely see him on campus because there's 42,000 people on my campus. So I had Brian. We would make sure, like I got really homesick. He was homesick sometimes, so he made sure to go eat and do that. But when I didn't have Brian, I did the rush process, which was fun. So I was basically shoved into a friend group, which again, works for some people, doesn't work for other people. But what really helped me my freshman year was getting into a small group. And a lot of people say that, but some things in colleges, anywhere, workplace, is the one thing you have in common with your neighbor is that you both have your faith. So when you had that group with you, it made it a lot easier and you felt more open to talk about things, even if they weren't the same denomination as you. But having that sorority was fun, but also like Brian was good help sometimes. We only talk about football. But just kind of, especially branching out, getting involved in clubs that you didn't think you'd be involved in and having that group too, which is really fun. But yeah, you kind of have to be independent and say hi first.
So this is kind of reiterating what Mrs. Keel was saying. Going into college, I had no idea how to make friends. I was in Veritas from kindergarten through 12th grade. Everyone always came to me. I never had to branch out, go say hi to new people. That was just not my world. So moving to college, all of a sudden I was like, I don't know how to do this. And it was a very slow process for me. I met a couple of people very randomly. Didn't really click with them, but I didn't really I didn't really have anyone else to hang out with. So I was like, I guess these people. And one of them actually introduced me to my best friends, and we've been friends since freshman year. They're awesome. I love them to death. But one of my biggest recommendations is to join clubs, whether that's intramurals, if you like sports. Just find something that really interests you and that you like and go join a club. because you'll be able to make friends more quickly. You'll be able to get integrated into a group. I wish that I had done intramurals my first year. I chickened out because I was like, I won't know anyone. But just do it. That would be my biggest recommendation. Like, just get involved, go to those clubs, go to the sports things, go to games for your school. That's another big one. But yeah, if you just try and get more integrated with your school, you'll be able to find friends quickly.
Yeah, I would agree with Nia in that just kind of putting yourself out there, even if you join a group and you end up leaving, meeting new people. But I guess I also have something a little bit just kind of for the girls. I think one of the best things coming out of college is pursuing like meaningful girl friendships. One of the things that I've seen, like as a senior every year, there's always the big guy-girl freshman group. And that always breaks up every single year. And then a lot of people are left like, well, I don't have my friends that I started with in the beginning. And it's kind of a mess. But I think one of the best things you can do, and guys too, is to really invest in your girl friendships. I think it's one of the best things about college. You're usually living with another girl, and I think it's been one of the things that has filled me up the most. Not in just my faith, but also just community wise, is having like best friends to lean on and invest into.
Hi. So one of the things that I go to a small liberal arts school. We have like 500 kids per class, which in the grand scheme of things is not very large for a college environment. And everyone tends to be very friendly. So you do meet people just by existing on campus. But for me, one of the big social determiners of how I met people was actually my freshman hall. So I had a co-ed freshman hall because I knew that I was not necessarily going to go out and randomly start talking to people, just because that's something I don't particularly enjoy doing. And that's how you make friends. That's how I made most of my friends freshman year, was through my hall. And we're all still friends, not to like knock your point about freshman friend groups, but my one girl from my hall, she's been my roommate since halfway through our freshman year when my original roommate left the university. But we are going to live together all 4 years of college. And I think that's really fun. And it's a good way to make friends, is even just to be in the same space as people and do activities that you yourself enjoy. Like, I love board games, so I would set up board games and people would just show up after you send like a message out in the group chat for the hall being like, I have Catan or Risk or something set up, which is quite nice.
Yeah, I think, well, when I was first thinking about going to college, I was not looking forward to making new friends. I'm an introvert. I don't like meeting new people. I really don't. I can put on a face, but not fun. So I made sure to keep in contact with all my friends back here. I called people weekly. I did not let go of those friendships, and I'm very glad I didn't. So for the first few terms, I was calling my closest friends once a week, keeping in touch. At the same time, though, I got plugged into a church community immediately, and that was the best thing I did last year. It was incredible. I love my church family. I have a ton of friends there with Bible study. I also forced myself to go to all of the events that my college had for meeting new people. So, like, that's speed dating, but where you all just like go meet people and you forget everyone's name by the end of the night and you have no idea what's happening. But it was helpful. The second most important thing I did was, I think, join the rowing team, because you're in a sport together. You're all, suffering in a boat for hours every morning, and that will forge friendships very quickly. But so my closest friend groups are in church and on the rowing team. And yeah, join a club, join your sports, find a Bible study. That is my best advice to give you.
Okay. Well, LVC is close enough to here that some of you see me every week, and some of you will come up and come watch a movie with me, which is very nice to the one of you who did that. You know who you are. But I'd say the main way I made a friend in college was our math department did this like freshman activity where you can make like the highest tower out of popsicle sticks and marshmallows. And the guy I was partnered with, I sat next to him next day in my first class, and now we're roommates, and I'm part of his friend group. And also, This is probably not for most people, but sports connections for guys, that's how you make friends. Like my other closest friend, I saw wearing a Liverpool jersey one day, and I went up and talked to him, and now I talk to him every night.
Yeah, there's a few ways that I would recommend making friends. Hall culture is a huge one. Kind of like what Meg was saying, that's probably how most of my friends at college, like that I know, that's where all of them started making friends freshman year because you have a ton of hall events, and at Liberty, that's pretty big. Another thing, echoing again, is your church. That's huge. Finding a church, going with people to church every Sunday. That's kind of a repeatable, um, like like a pattern that you get in every week. And if you go with the same people, you start getting close to them. You get meals throughout the week. Um, for me, I'd say freshman year, I kind of had like a wide-ish group of kind of friends, and then throughout the years, it's kind of become very apparent who I want to invest more time in, like who I think would be good to kind of iron sharpens iron. Um, and a big factor for me actually has been engineering because of my class schedule, and then on the formula team, those are just kind of my friends because I don't have a lot of time to go do social activities every week. So if I want to keep up friendships, I ask them if they want to come do work at the library with me. Then we both sit there and do work for 8 hours in a day with a few sentences to each other, but it just works. So that's kind of how it's been for me.
Okay, thank you. And this may be our last question, and I'll see if we have time for Q&A, but I'm gonna kind of combine number 9 and 11, so you can choose which angle you want to take. And those questions are, is there anything you would tell your 16-year-old self to do differently? Or sum up your biggest advice for Veritas 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders.
I think my biggest advice would be to pursue your faith and make it as real to yourself as fast as you can, and kind of make that the number one thing that's driving your life. I think a trap that I definitely fell into, and I think a lot of people can fall into, is kind of making your goals for college or your work or your career or your relationship or your sports or whatever, kind of make that the thing that's dictating everything else in your life, whether you realize it or not. And then anytime that thing hits a hiccup or a bump in the road, you kind of get a little bit shaken with everything. So I would highly recommend, if I could change one thing, I would go back and really make sure and shore up my foundation there, because I think that would have saved a lot of headache throughout the past couple of years.
For me, I guess my advice would be the public speaking and just being able to communicate to people. You can have the greatest resume in the world, and if you just look at your feet and mutter, you're not going to get the job. So being able to communicate winsomely is something that this school emphasizes and something that is actually really important.
Yeah, I think my big advice, kind of similar to John's, is I think you've all been through Mr. Dennis's Boethius 11th grade class. Maybe you haven't yet. It's excellent if that's still happening. But keep in mind to always order everything you do to God's glory, to the ultimate good, the summum bonum, to use some Latin here. And yeah, I think trying to live that out in all aspects of your life, in your academics, everything you do as a student, your vocation as a student is to do that for God's glory, and not to see that as something that's lesser, but to see that as a great gift, as an opportunity to work really hard at that, and in all other areas of your life, and that will really pay off. That'd be my biggest advice to a 10th through 12th grader. Just keep your eyes fixed on the telos of your life and your eternal destination.
One of the biggest things I'd have to say, both to all of you and to my 16-year-old self, would be ask for help. Like, you cannot do everything on your own. And if you try to, things are going to fall to the wayside, and it's just not going to be an enjoyable experience. So if you have opportunities you want to pursue in college, go to your professors, ask for help. I know in particular letters of recommendation or even just suggesting opportunities that I had never heard of before from professors has been so beneficial. And even ask for help in places you're not necessarily expecting it. A few weeks ago, I was going to be driving back here from Virginia, and we had a massive snowstorm. The car iced over. And so my friend and I asked the public safety officer who was driving by if they had an ice pick that we could use to like get the car out. And they did. And they completely like de-iced the car for us. And that's what let us drive home and like get back to Pennsylvania. And so even if you think you might be able to handle it by yourself, it's always good to have someone there in case you aren't able to, whether that's a professor who can help you look over papers before you submit them to try and get them published, or a friend who's there when you know that you're just going to have a really rough day. I think that's one of the most important networks to build up, both in high school and in college and life in general. So.
I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I'd give to myself is to kind of understand how to trust God's plan and understand his will while also still prioritizing making a plan. I think one of the best things I could tell you guys is that it's really good to have a plan, even though it may change. So even though a lot of you might not know what you're going to do in the future, if you have a plan, whether you're going to college or not, it's good to have that because you end up following like a systematic set of, you end up making goals for yourself and rules. But I think God will use every part of your life, even though he may change the end goal. He will use the effort and the work that you put in to get towards your prior goal in a different way. And that was very true for me. I went into college being pre-med and now I'm pre-dental, which it's like, it might not seem as that much big of a change to people, but I ended up doing a lot of the things that were pre-dental, but I did a little bit overkill because I thought I was going to go to med school, but that ended up helping me in my applications because I have research now that I might not have done if I thought I was going to dental school, and a lot of things that will maybe set me apart. So know that it's okay for your plan to change, but it's a good idea to have a plan.
Okay, so I have two really quick things. One, when you're, sorry guys, when you're finding your friend group, find friends who will sharpen you, who will push you to walk with Christ. Don't find friends who are pushing you to party or do the wrong thing, because those friends are easy to find. Find the friends who will push you in your faith, who will walk in the Lord with you, and go to church with you. Find a church right away. Don't be lazy Sunday mornings. Don't sleep in. Get up. Go to church. That would be my biggest piece of advice for your walk in the faith. But for your academic career, if you don't know what you want to do, I would encourage you to take different kinds of classes freshman year. You have time to figure out what you want to do. Find out what you enjoy. Find out what you like and what like motivates you. Don't be scared to try different things. If you don't know what you want to do, try a criminology class, try a business class, try a science class. See what floats your boat, what you really enjoy. But yeah, that would be.
You're fine.
Someone's about to barge in or something. One of the biggest pieces of advice that I got from Veritas, and I get reminded from a lot of like my older peers, which is really hard to for me at least grasp, at least in Veritas. And then I even have to remind myself sometimes every day going through classes is things are a get to, not a have to. And so when you walk through your days like that and you find yourself complaining about certain things and things like that, like some other student or some other college kid is somewhere around the world that would kill to be in your spot right now. So whether that's you're just like, oh, I had this long walk to class, somebody's studying harder than you in another state or another country, wishing that they had the opportunity to end up in 4 years with a degree, so that they could get the job they want. So I think that reminder, get to, not have to, definitely helps me, which obviously, again, when I was in Veritas, it was super hard for me to like think every day. And then also another thing, you're going to be around a lot of peers, especially now when you're thinking of college decisions, majors, but comparison kills when you're going through decision processes, and when whether it's GPAs, SAT scores, you get into college, somebody gets an internship that you didn't get, and you are not like that person, and you probably will strive in another way. But again, be friends with that person so that you can like learn through their experiences and things like that. But again, comparing yourself is not going to kind of, edge you on to what experiences that may be waiting for you that God hasn't opened that door yet. So I think that's what I had to learn a lot, especially junior year, finishing this past year. But also like professional development, go get a job, like work in the summer. If you have time, work during school. Interview processes are really good because it gives you the satisfactory of I got that. And if you didn't get it, like, okay, it kind of pushes you more to get something better and kind of teaches you how to better yourself. But yeah, that would be my advice.
Thank you. Let's give our college students a round of applause. We're really grateful for each of you, and high school